Right. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Can you all still see me? Can you see me, Michelle? Because I can't see you at the
I
moment.
can see you,
My
lovely.
screen. Ah, fantastic. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Michelle Eldon. Michelle is a co-director with me at PEEPSA. She's an entrepreneur. She's a best-selling author, founder of A New You, who some of you are, I know, members of. She's a career development coach, business consultant, podcast host of Listening to Survivors, and a fellow survivor of coercive control, domestic abuse, and post-separation abuse. Michelle's widely recognised for her work helping survivors to rebuild their lives through modalities like the Tesla Code. I think I've said that right, Michelle.
You have, lovely, yeah.
A powerful nervous system recalibration approach, which is designed to help women move beyond survival mode and reconnect with themselves, regaining confidence, clarity, and have purpose after abuse. And she's also a co-author of the newly released audiobook, which is why we're all here tonight, Start Over Voices. And that's following the success of her acclaimed book, Hear Her Roar, on domestic abuse. So during our conversation, we're going to explore things such as healing after abuse, trauma recovery, family court experiences, rebuilding our identity, and finding joy and hope beyond survival. And Michelle's insight, compassion, and expertise make this a conversation not to be missed. Okay. Right, Michelle.
Thank you,
there we go. You're welcome. So let me get my list of questions up. I love that
see the slides, sorry, because when I share them, everyone disappears off my screen. But as long as you can see the slides, that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, I can see the slides and I can hear you. So that is brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. Right, bear with me a second. Okay, so Michelle, can you tell us a bit about your journey up to the family court process in your own time?
Yeah, of course. So the reason, firstly, I just want to explain why I'm sharing this is just so you ladies know that I've kind of been there on some level. So I do understand and kind of resonate on some level with what perhaps some of you have been through. So in my late 30s, I went through an emotionally, psychologically, and also financially abusive marriage where I can literally describe it as I felt like I'd lost my soul. In January 2020, I became a single mum, literally £60 in the bank, mortgage bills to pay, usual kind of adulting, shall we say, business to run, and an absent father. In May 2022, out of literally nowhere, family court proceedings were instigated by my ex-husband, which coincidentally was immediately after our divorce was finalised. And at that stage, despite barely seeing our child in those 2 years, he requested full custody of her. As many of you may be able to resonate with, this led to overwhelming levels of anxiety, stress, panic attacks, lots of juggling around work life, home life, trying to manage my child's emotional health, many sleepless nights, whilst also trying to just literally keep my head above water. During family courts, I self-represented just because I believed the truth was the truth. I believe my evidence was there and spoke for itself. The only hearing I had representation at was the final hearing. However, in October 23, my child was actually wrongfully removed from my care and sent to live with our abuser. At that point, I was told that I'd never see her again, but afterwards, a few weeks evolved and I ended up actually having to pay thousands of pounds just to reconnect with her, what was via supervised contact centre visits. However, although that moment in 2023 at that time seemed like the end, it was the darkest place I think I've ever been in. At that moment, something happened, something in me rose and just refused to disappear again. Something said to me, you don't have to give up now. So I didn't. And day by day, choice by choice, I started to rebuild again.
Oh, wow, Michelle. I mean, I don't know how people do at that point, I mean, yeah, I found it hard enough. And I was in a position where I was living with the idea that my child was going to be taken, my children were going to be taken over sort of 5, 6 years of family court, and that threat was enough to make me have the panic attacks, as you just described, that awful, panicky, horrible, overwhelming feeling.
Yeah.
So for where you were, I don't think you can hit bottom, can you, any lower than that when your child is
No,
removed,
no,
So
literally.
I mean,
That's the
yeah, go on,
reason I
sorry.
sort of wanted to share it. And again, I don't want to trigger anyone, or I get this initial part of the conversation is quite deep,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, but I just
yeah,
want people to know, to maybe resonate on some level with my journey, but also the rest of this session is going to be empowering. It's going to be inspiring. Yes, I've been at that dark place, the dark night of the soul, as I call it, but I've also
yeah,
rebuilt since then. So it's just to give
absolutely.
you kind of a bit of an idea of actually, I do get it on some level at least.
100%. I mean, can you tell us a bit about what your life looks like now and how things have changed and improved for you?
Yeah, so post-separation abuse is still sadly ongoing. That hasn't stopped, unfortunately, since literally 2020, that I can remember. And obviously dealing with now the aftermath of family court proceedings. I've got 50-50 care of our child. But despite all of that, I'm now the owner of 4 different businesses. So I've established 3 new ones since actually my child was removed from my care. I'm an international best-selling author on the topics of domestic abuse and family courts, which, as Sarah said, there's a recent chapter in an audiobook that's due to be released actually tomorrow. I've trained in lots of different healing modalities, and the reason I did that initially was to actually just empower my child, because I was so adamant that no one was going to ruin her mental health, her physical health, that I wanted to invest in these things to support her. And by doing that, though, I've actually feel like I've found my purpose in actually empowering my child, empowering me, but also empowering other ladies who have been through similar, which is where I feel my passion and purpose lies now. As some of you may know, I'm also the founder of A New You, which is the community where I try to empower women who've experienced domestic abuse and or also family court trauma. But I guess most important to me, and one thing that's really changed me, both in terms of my personality, how I conduct myself, but also kind of in business life in general, is I now have a constant state of inner peace, regardless of what life throws at me. So it's almost like an impenetrable barrier, I guess, is the only way I can describe it, whereby, yes, life still lives, yes, life's still not perfect, but I feel that I can face those challenges with a lot more confidence and also a lot more calm. And for
Yeah,
me, I've rose from rock bottom twice now, once in 2020, again in 23, and I'm so passionate about helping other women just thrive, reclaim their power and identity, and just receive everything they desire without any cost to themselves. And I guess for
yeah,
me,
yeah,
what I learned through it all was, like, our past doesn't have to define us. The shame that some of you may carry today isn't yours to hold, and it never ever was. And abuse doesn't sadly just take your identity, it takes your feeling of safety, a feeling of being you as well. And it
yeah,
convinces you that you're the problem. And sometimes, unfortunately, that is not just the perpetrator, it can be the systems, family courts, those associated organizations we deal with as well. They can make you feel that you're unworthy, you're not good enough. But please just know that is never, and that will never be your truth. I just want everyone watching this tonight, to remember that.
absolutely. I mean, look what, Giselle Pellicott said as well, isn't it? Shame must change sides. And you just reminded me of
Yeah,
that there as well. And that's so true, isn't it?
100%.
And looking at your experience of the family court, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, as I'm sure, sadly, many of us watching can resonate, I think it was literally so far away from what I expected. I went into that, although my ex-husband instigated the proceedings and I was nervous, I had what I call natural feelings of anxiety, because it was a new environment for me. I'd never had any dealings with such like organizations or family court or anything like that before. I went in actually quite confident, thinking, right, this is the evidence, this is the truth, what a silly man he is, you know, he's going to be, you know, exposing himself here. And sadly, it wasn't what I experienced at all. It was a million miles away from that. And I'm just going to share some common themes I experienced here, not to kind of be negative or to focus on those, but for those of you watching tonight, just to know that if you can resonate with any of these, just understand that it means that the problem isn't and was never you. So for me, those common themes were just having my truth constantly twisted and reframed. So the narrative was constantly rewritten. You know, most, if not all, of the reports we received during proceedings were fictitious. You know, they contained inaccurate and biased information. Information was omitted regarding serious safeguarding concerns. And throughout those proceedings, as much as I fought as hard as I could and raised certain concerns, you know, about safeguarding my child's well-being, I felt like I was invisible. I felt like I wasn't believed. I was threatened so many times that if you keep speaking out, you know, X, Y, and Z will happen. And the language people used was constantly belittling. It was threatening, as I said. And for anyone that's had the terms, you know, alienating, perhaps hostile, obstructive, difficult, please just know these are common terms that family court professionals use to deflect the blame onto you. But when it's not a you problem, it's not your fault. And there was constant breaches of practice directions which govern the family court, you know, regulations, case law, complete bias towards our abuser, and no consideration at all for the impact on our child. And the domestic abuse itself was completely ignored. I was never given a fact-finding hearing, so that again was a breach of practice direction. And none of my evidence, quite literally, was ever looked at. It was all just thrown out, basically, as if it didn't matter. But the reason, as I said, I want to share this is if you can resonate with any of this, even just one point, just know the problem was and the problem is not you. It's not about your character, your worth, anything you've done wrong, or your truth, or any kind of failing on your part. This is how the family courts operate. They rewrite the narrative because it benefits them. And thousands, if not millions, of parents across the globe have been affected, you know, in exactly the same way, sadly. And again, you know, I just want people to know that are listening, they're not alone. You know, we've all come together collectively, even just this little session tonight, we've come together collectively because we've all, on some level, again, can resonate with each other's stories, you know, whether we've had a similar experience, you know, whether that's in the relationship or after. We're all here in it together, and I just want people to know that no one is ever alone.
Absolutely, Michelle, absolutely. And I think it's very much that sort of copy and paste exercise, isn't it, where they will say mother's hostile, implacably hostile, mother's enmeshed, parental alien. These are words that they just churn out, and exactly as you said, these are not you. These words are not who you are. It's not your identity at all. Because if it was, there'd be 100,000 of you every year who are identical in that way, in that regard, who are called these things. It's just not. It's not who you are. You're all wonderful human beings, and please don't, you know, listen to that.
I think, as you said,
what they tell you are.
Sorry, I was just going to say, lovely, when we're in proceedings as well, we're all told not to speak about them, aren't we? We're all told don't speak to family, don't speak to friends, don't speak to anyone outside of this. And, you know, that's where that isolation comes in. And until we start speaking, like in tonight's session, some of us may be able to resonate with the fact, oh, yeah, someone called me obstructive, or someone said I was alienating. And it's until we start having those open conversations, which I feel are so important, people think it's a problem with them, but
absolutely
it couldn't be further from the
buzzwords.
truth.
That's all they are. They're buzzwords. They're not you. They're not you, and they're not your identity.
Absolutely.
So how did you sort of navigate through this process? Because I know that I really struggled with it. You know, and what sort of practices do you find that helped you to get through them?
Yeah, so there was quite a lot of things, to be honest. But I think tonight I wanted to share sort of, I guess, the key things for me. again, so people can either utilize any of these, and just hopefully kind of, take maybe at least one or two things away from tonight that they can sort of use moving forward. So when I was perhaps going into a hearing or just having a tricky day, shall we say, or, when I just was really, really struggling energy, but also, physically, mentally as well, I used to put on high energy music before hearings, and that music was always the same song for me, which is really random. But it was Unstoppable by Sia, because it literally made me feel that way. It lifted my energy, my posture changed, my confidence changed. And for me, that was a really quick fix, within minutes, whether it was a remote hearing or whether I was driving there or sat kind of in the waiting room with my mobile phone on me. I would just pop music on, to try and sort of calm myself primarily in that time, but also give me increased confidence as well. And for me, music has been a really big part of my journey kind of since then as well.
Yeah,
another
absolutely.
thing I used to use was the Wonder Woman pose. And for those of you that may not know, it's literally sort of standing really tall, shoulders back, chest out, hands on the hips, feet slightly apart, and controlled breathing in deeply, exhaling out slowly. And by doing that, again, it built confidence. And there is some science behind it, which I'll be honest, I don't know the exact science behind it, but apparently, again, it just helps you reconnect with yourself and just to start to feel kind of strong again, in yourself as well. And another thing was breath work, which was a huge part of my journey. And for me, I used to utilize that several times a day. It could have literally been, if I was driving somewhere with my child and I would just have overwhelming anxiety a lot of the time, even kind of, outside of hearings. And it's hard as a mother to retain that composure, if that's the right word, and try and retain what I call normal life when you're going through something that is so draining, but so difficult to manage. And for me, as simple as it is, utilizing my breath in those moments of overwhelm or stress or anxiety became a huge thing. So a practice I used to use was just breathing in for 4 seconds, releasing that for 6 seconds, and just saying to myself, I am safe. And whether that was in my mind or out loud just depended on where I was. But that basically signals to your nervous system that you are safe, and it helps restore that inner peace and that calm again. So that's something that you can draw on, whether you're in proceedings now or just trying to kind of manage any anxiety or any kind of triggers that may sort of come up throughout what I would call, a normal day, shall we say. And one thing as well that I know Sarah just touched on is don't absorb anyone else's words as your identity. So as I'm sure sadly many of us can resonate, what is written about us, what is said about us is sometimes really upsetting, quite distressing actually, because we know it's not the truth, and that can be really hard to deal with. But one thing I learned is just recognizing that what someone else says doesn't define who you are. It doesn't suddenly become the truth. It doesn't suddenly become your identity or who you are, your persona. And the narrative they try to deflect on you is a reflection of their agenda, not you, not your reality. And again, please just always remember that. And another thing as well, along with the breath work, I think gratitude practice for me was another really significant part of my journey during, but also after as well. So someone mentioned to me about practicing gratitude, and I was like, oh, don't be silly, that, what a load of woohoo, gobbledygook, etc. But I did it daily because, to be honest, I didn't have much else to grasp at that time. So I was like, what's the worst can happen? I'm going to try it. And I did. And I found it really helped me cultivate a positive mindset, what we know as like a growth mindset, where we're looking kind of forward, but we're also present in today rather than reflecting on what's been. And for me, although, at times, obviously, my circumstances didn't change for a long time, it just helped me look at what I did have, not what I didn't have. And the 3 things I chose literally to end my day with were always things I was grateful for. So it started off so simple, like, you know, I just put the kettle on, or I was able to have a hot shower, or some days I could get out of bed, or, you know, I'd been for a walk, or a friend had been round. It was nothing momentous, but I built on that. And again, it took weeks to build on that, don't get me wrong, but just ending the day with actually I'm grateful for is a huge change in mindset, and it helps you face challenges in a different way. And then I also used to end my days with 3 things I'd achieved that day. And again, it was small things. It was, you know, I've managed to go out for a walk, or I've been able to send an email, or I've had a moment of calm. It was literally kind of anything and everything that just helped me focus on those small positives. And along those similar lines, it's really been about recognizing the small wins. And again, it helps the shift in mindset, helps you go from that sort of survival mode, shall we say, to one of growth and resilience. So there was a point where I used to measure my family court proceedings by my outcome, i.e. I had my child taken from me. And that was hard. It took a while to kind of get out of that mindset, to be honest. But when I started to look at, actually, this has happened, this was sadly rock bottom, but I knew from that point I could rebuild. I knew from that point it couldn't get any worse than that. And for me, it was from then recognizing the small wins. And again, you know, getting out of bed some days, you know, having a moment of peace, setting a boundary, you know, literally surviving another difficult day, having a shower, having a little bit more contact with my child, which obviously sadly came at a cost, but just grasping those small wins just really helped me look towards the possibility of, you know, what I'd hoped at that time would be a brighter future.
Absolutely. And I think as well, you know, it's just all those things that you just said then. I mean, I don't know if it's resonated with the ladies here, but it definitely resonated with me. And I know when I was going through that, you know, some of the worst times of my life, some of those things that you did there, you know, the breath work, the Wonder Woman pose, the music, you know, I still do those things now, but not enough, not anywhere near as much as I should be doing, as we were saying earlier, weren't we? You know, these are the things that started my healing journey. And gratitude. I remember waking up in the morning and thinking, well, I've got nothing. I don't feel grateful about anything. You know, I've got to go to court today. I've got no money. It's drained me of my money. I don't even know where I'm going to go and buy milk in the shop for my coffee. You know, little things like that. But eventually I started to find that gratitude somewhere in there. And I don't know, for me, it changed the world for me. I looked at things in a completely different way over time and saw beauty in things that I had never stopped to think about before. You know, so I think what you said is wonderful. You know, it really is, and it definitely resonates a lot there with me. Thanks so much for that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, like you said, Sarah, gratitude, for me, when someone talked to me about it, I was like, that's just ridiculous. Like, I was like, that's so simple. Like, I am grateful for, you know, X, Y, and Z. And at that time, you know, at rock bottom, obviously, like you said, I didn't feel grateful. But prior to all this, shall we say, I thought I was one of the people that appreciated things and was grateful for everything I've got. But in essence, I think there is a real beauty in appreciating the simple things in life. Literally, the fresh air, really nature, you know, trees, going for a walk, and it brings a whole new perspective, doesn't it? And it enables you, I think personally, to face challenges so much differently with renewed strength, because you're like, people can't take away the fresh air, they can't take away nature, they can't take away the fact that, you know, you're still breathing, or you can walk, or, you know, it's those things that actually we don't stop to think about, because sadly we are trying to survive some days, which I completely respect. But when we do end the day with a little bit of gratitude for something, no matter how small it is, like you said, it can change your perspective on everything.
It really does. Oh, thank you so much for that, because I needed to hear that. I really did. I really did. Thank you. So I was going to ask as well. Sorry, go on, Michelle.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Angela's just said in the comments, bless her, about you know, you find it hard when your babies aren't with you. And Do you know what, Angela, I get that. And do you know what, this is one thing I used to be grateful for, and I mean this in the most sensitive way, is that my child was still alive. You know, I've visited third world countries where people lose their children quite literally, and I know I send my biggest love and everything to you, Andrew. I completely get how you're feeling now, but I think as long as you have some level of hope to grasp onto, sometimes as hard as that is, sometimes that's all there is. And I think if you can be grateful for the memories you've had and then be certain and hopeful that things will move forward, I think sometimes that's sadly all we can have sometimes, but just know that that is enough, and that is always enough. And the universe, from my experience of life's challenges, has always had a way of evolving my life, evolving the shit I've been through, and apologies for my language, into something more positive, into something more purposeful. And I get, having my child removed from my care and other things I've been through in my lifetime, that it's so hard to see that at that time. It really is. But I think the more we can go, actually, firstly, what can I learn? You know, what can I take from this? But also, what can I do when things do get better? Because things will get better, and I'm a firm believer in that for all of us ladies. It's what can I do now for myself or my children to progress our life, even if it's something really small. And I hope that comes across in the best way, Angela, because as I said, I get the heartfelt and everything that comes with that, and what you must be feeling right now, lovely. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you were the best place to answer that as well, Michelle, because, you know, that's something that you have been through yourself. And like I said, you know, that was my worst nightmare that I lived, you know, with for that sort of 5 years, is worrying that that would happen. But actually, you women give me the most incredible strength for everything that you've been through. You know, you've lived my worst nightmare, and knowing that that's happened gives me strength to keep fighting on for you all as well. So I just wanted to say that you know, it does give me that sort of incentive and strength to keep going. What, you know, there are days where you feel like, you know, am I getting anywhere with this? But actually, there's a lot of positive things that are going on behind the scenes. And I just hope that, you know, these things will come down onto the front line soon, and you'll all feel the effects of them, you know. But
100%.
I'm just so glad we've got this sense of at least community, and that we're not alone. And to me, that means so much as well, is that we're not alone in this, and we all have each other wherever we are in the world. We all have an understanding, which means that so much that other people might not, that haven't been through it. So, you know,
I agree.
it's hard.
Definitely.
It's hard.
Definitely.
I mean, was there anything, Michelle, that you found that, you know, within this that helped you to actually support your daughter through this? I mean, did that in itself give you sort of some strength as well to go on? Is thinking, I've got to be okay for her, and what am I going to do to help her, you know, when I see her? This kind of idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think my love for her kept me going. I'll be brutally honest with you. You know, I know as mothers, we all care for our children, don't we, so deeply, which is why there's so much emotional attachment to family court, you know, things we experience through that. That's where the heartfelt emotions come into play. So I knew, and I was adamant for my daughter's sake, that I was not going to kind of let them destroy her life. You know, I was so determined, as hard as it was. I'm not going to say it was easy, don't get me wrong, but I was so determined that those beeps weren't going to ruin her life like they had done, or that I thought they had done. So, you know, when we were together eventually after those sort of period of separation, but also even before that, as in, you know, throughout family court proceedings, again, dance and music was a huge part of our lives, you know, just to bring in when I didn't have the words, when I didn't have the capacity, to be honest, mentally, because my mind was quite literally taken up with family court processes. What email do I need to send? What do I need to do next? And work and life in general. I didn't have the mental capacity to perhaps sit and engage with my child in the way I'd like to. But by popping some music on, dancing and just moving our bodies, for me, it was just releasing joy. It was reconnecting to ourselves again, and just remembering actually we can still have those small glimmers of joy in what is, you know, a really, really difficult situation. And then also one thing I did, again, this was before proceedings, but I also actually did it after she was removed from my care. So I don't know if I was allowed to or not, but I did it. So when we used to have supervised visits, I basically took like a piece of card with me and some post-it notes, and we made what I call an affirmation board together. And I don't know if that's like the technical term for it or not, but basically I had coloured post-it notes, and she wrote some things down on there, like, you know, my voice matters, I'm enough, and sorry, one of those slides is slightly wrong. It should say I'm amazing, you know, I am confident. And I wrote some things down as well. So I said to my daughter, you know, what do you want to write down about yourself? How do you feel about yourself? And there was some difficult things came out of that, you know, I am sad, I miss mummy, that kind of thing. But when we started to do these boards, shall we say, frequently, it started to become more positive. I think it naturally shifted both our mindsets and our strength and power, whatever you want to call it, in that situation. And then when I could see her more within the home, I used to pop post-it notes literally pretty much every room in the house that kind of she never knew about, bless her, but it would almost be like a little surprise of like, I am strong, Maya, which is my girl's name, is amazing, she deserves the best, and things like that, just to keep the empowerment, you know, and the positivity, and know she was loved and cared for. And then spirituality for me has been a huge part of my journey, which again I'll go into a little bit more detail later on, but I taught my daughter that spiritual side as well on a very child-friendly level. So basically I purchased some children's angel cards, and with those cards, you know, like how adults would use them, you shuffle them and it would obviously bring out like a message. So with those cards for us, it could have been, I think, randomly throughout proceedings, we had something called innocence, which was a message on the particular card, and it kept saying, even if adults are grumpy, it's not your fault. And although it wasn't quite the message like she would have needed to receive, on some level, you know, she and I both started to resonate with these things, and things like safety. You know, there was different cards that drew kind of both comfort for her, most importantly, but kind of for me as well, knowing that she believed that there was something greater than us both kind of protecting us. Also, we, on that note, we also started to learn about angel numbers, which again, some of you may or may not already be aware of, but for us, it was every time we looked at the clock, you know, it'd be 12:12, or it would be 10:10, or 09:09. And for those of you that know about angel numbers, that is meant to be your angels, you know, your guardian angels, the creator, whatever you believe in, communicating with you. And we used to find and see those numbers a hell of a lot, and again, it just made us both feel like, you know, we were protected and there was someone there for us, basically. And as I said before, a key thing, which I know all you lovely ladies will know already, but it's just about building as much of a sense of unconditional love and pride within them, you know, just through words, through actions, you know, through a listening ear. And just, even if sadly you're not seeing your children at the moment, just building those things in the background, that when you can and will see them, they've known that you've been thinking about them. So one thing I did throughout the period where I didn't see my daughter is I actually created an email address for her. And in that email address, I sent her poems that I'd written, I sent her sort of images I'd seen online, and just little things that I'd kind of gathered, shall we say, during that period, just for as and when I would see her again. And I was adamant that no one was going to stop me seeing her again, that I could show her this collection, shall we say, of emails, things, and friends had made her cards, family had made her cards, and I'd photographed it all, and it's all stored within this email sort of portfolio. So that's something that for me was really important as well. And I've just listed a few books there which are aimed at what I would call younger children, so probably between the ages of, let's say, like 3, maybe up to about 12. But again, those books for me we used to read as much as we could just to inspire her, and again in a child focused way, just to let her know actually she could speak up, her voice mattered. The invisible string is, even if we're not together, we are literally still attached, which is one thing I still sort of say to my daughter now every time I see her. From my head to my toes is more about consent. So it's a very child focused way of actually saying, you know, we don't consent to things that we don't want to, and that kind of aspect of it. And no matter what is about, actually, no matter what happens, my love is unconditional. I'm here for you. I'm waiting. And again, those books just really, really helped. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. And then with the whole routine for us both throughout proceedings, don't get me wrong, it was really, really hard to maintain a routine because, as I'm sure many of you know, when you are trying to get through yourself, so you are struggling, you are surviving yourself, it's really hard to bring a child up, shall we say, in the way you want to, because you don't have the energy to give them, you don't have kind of the capacity to give them the conversations, the, you know, the fun, shall we say. And I mean that in the most respectful way, because this is literally exactly how I felt. So on the days where I did find it hard, I still managed to drag us literally outside. And some days it was only like 20 minutes, cycle around the block. But I was so adamant that we were to keep a level of routine because it was important to her, but it turned out is actually important to me as well, and that we maintain some level of normality, you know, consistency within, as you all know, was what, you know, a very difficult scenario.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, my heart. Honestly, some of the things that you said then, I mean, honestly, Michelle, you're just thinking, what an amazing mother to do all those wonderful things to keep yourself strong, to keep your daughter strong, you know, the things that you were doing so that when you reunited, that you were going to be okay, and everything that you did then for her to reassure her that, you know, that you were both being looked after. Mummy's okay, my daughter's, and all these wonderful things that you did. I mean, it just says to me, what an amazing mother. And again, it just says
Thank
there's
you.
so many wonderful, wonderful mothers out there, you know, that have had this happen to them. And it's just, it's so wrong, isn't it? It's so wrong when you can see just how wonderful you all are. I can't think of another word, you know, as mothers, how empathetic you are, as much as you love them, how you put them before you, you know, and I just wish that those judges and those courts could just see how resilient, I don't necessarily like that word, but you know, how incredible you are as human beings and as mothers, just putting your child, you know, above all else, no matter what's happening. And it's just incredible. You know, when you're going through that pain yourself, you know, and what a credit, you know, these children will be to you and these mothers that do that, you know,
Do you know
without a
what I
doubt.
will say for all the mums out there? They underestimated us. And genuinely, they
Absolutely.
underestimated a mother's love for their
Yes.
children. They really have
Yeah.
done, because yes, don't get me wrong, it is so difficult. I never want to pretend any different. It is so hard. But as Kelly said in the comments, you know, her son was
Yeah.
taken, but
Yeah.
it's driven her to feel more of who she is, to remember who she is, so her son can
Absolutely.
know who she is. And do you know what, Kelly, I
Absolutely.
resonate with that, lovely. I really do, because before proceedings, I'd lost myself. I
Yeah.
didn't have any confidence. I didn't have anything, I don't really think, when I look back. And now, you know, I'm not overly confident, don't get me wrong. There's still sort of work to be done, shall we say. But I think for me, it's made me remember who the hell I am.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
don't mess with a mother, because their
Don't
love for
mess
their
with a mother.
child is unconditional. And I
Absolutely.
think, as much as I don't wish this upon anyone, I know in those moments where I've been broken, quite literally, I can only describe it as the light has then come in. Like Kelly said, bless her, I've remembered who I am. I've remembered who I was before
Absolutely.
this rubbish, shall we say, to put it politely.
Absolutely.
And
And you become that light. You become that light, don't you? You know, that light where you're in the dark, you're looking for the light all the time. You cannot find it, and you realize, and I remember having this kind of moment. God, I am the light. I can get us out of this,
yeah,
however I, you know, can do it. And
Yeah,
you become that light, and you're there then for your child, aren't you? Once that sort of light
yeah,
sort of turns on again. And
yeah.
they do underestimate that, a mother's love is something, and that bond that they can never take. They can't, nobody can ever take that. Whatever
No,
they think they can take, they can't take that.
no,
No.
exactly. And like you said, now conversations are opening up, aren't they? Communities
Yeah,
are opening up. People are starting to be more vocal, more visible, whatever you want to call it, about what's going on. And that strength in numbers, that community is so
yeah,
powerful. And anyone watching this, as I know we have said before, but just please know you're not alone. You're not alone in
absolutely.
this. You are strong as one with all of us. We're all fighting at different stages. We can all resonate on some level with what each other's experience, but we're all in it together. And I mean that, because I am
Yeah.
so passionate about no mother is going under my watch, and I mean that,
No, no,
like,
mine.
so passionate
Absolutely.
about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll keep spreading the word far and wide, won't we, Michelle?
Yeah,
We'll keep exposing this continuously so that
yeah,
everyone knows what's happening, and nobody ever feels alone. Even if you can't be physically there with each and every person, they still know that there's this real sense of, bonding and community between us all, and we're all
yeah,
there for each other. I think that's so
100%.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah. So how, now that you're out of family, well, I'm assuming you're out of family court proceedings
yeah,
now. So what's helped you since then kind of reclaim your life, your identity? How have you been able to create a
yeah,
life that you really desire, and to find joy again? Because joy is so important, isn't it, to have joy in our
yeah,
lives?
100%. And I think, as I said before, post separation abuse, which is still ongoing, is difficult, don't get me wrong, but I have found ways, shall we say, of just rebuilding myself primarily, but then just learning that I still deserve a life. My child still deserves a life. And as you rightly said, Sarah, it's about grasping those moments of joy and happiness, creating memories within that. So for me, nature has been a huge part of that. I've always been an outdoor girl, shall we say. But when I first finished proceedings, I literally had agoraphobia, I think, looking back in hindsight. I couldn't step outside the front door. And I don't quite understand why. I don't know if I held some level of shame, even though no one, I don't think, really knew what had happened. I just couldn't step outside the front door. So for me, it started off literally going to my back garden, just taking a few deep breaths, as I sort of mentioned before, just literally taking my shoes off, my socks off, feeling the grass, the earth beneath me, and just breathing in really deeply. And it just helped me, and still does actually help me, just connect with myself, like almost remembering who I am sort of outside of all the chaos, shall we say. And it's just helped to regulate me, on a nervous level, sort of body level, and just regain that inner peace as well. One thing as well I've definitely learned since family court proceedings, which has actually been vital for me, because I don't think if I'd stopped to rest after proceedings, I don't think I'd be here now, because I was running on maybe 2 hours sleep a night for probably too long, about 6 months maybe. And I don't actually know how I survived. And as much as, don't get me wrong, I didn't want my child to be taken from me, I didn't want her to be in the situation she was put in. I think if she'd still been with me, it would have been really difficult for me to regain myself, regain my physicality, because my mental, my physical health were just absolutely shot, if I'm honest. So for me, rest was a real essential part of my healing, just literally sleeping, because I was absolutely exhausted, as I'm sure sadly many of you can resonate with, but just sleeping, resting without feeling guilty. And at first, to be honest, I did feel guilty, because I was like, how can I rest when my child is going through this? Like, how dare I kind of, have any glimpse of joy or happiness in my life when my child is going through what they are? But actually, for me, it was about taking that time for me and just prioritizing that, without those feelings of guilt. And then, as we touched on just now, just the power of connection, community. So as much as I love my friends and family, and don't get me wrong, they've been an absolute blessing at times, but I think for me it's been so important to connect with other ladies like yourselves who really understand, who get it, because as much as we can try and explain to other people, this is what's happening, or they said this, or they've done this, people don't believe it sometimes, because I think it is literally unbelievable, sadly, that people just don't and can't resonate. So for me, communities like your amazing PEEPSA, Sarah, obviously yourself, the wonderful ladies in the New You group, and just the wider kind of communities and connections I've made, that with ladies that have been through this subject have been, just been a blessing, really. And then,
Oh, wow. Go on,
one,
sorry, Michelle.
sorry, my lovely.
No?
Another thing is just building my knowledge around domestic abuse, coercive control, narcissist, post-separation abuse. I'll be honest, they were terms I'd never, ever even heard of. I've heard of domestic abuse, but narcissist, post-separation abuse, coercive control, I didn't even know what those words meant, just to be brutally honest with you. And I think after that relationship is when I started to sort of listen to podcasts. I sort of had a few books, like, for trying and empower myself, went on YouTube and just trying to kind of piece together what had happened. That then released a lot of guilt and shame from me, a lot of blame that I placed on myself, that it was my fault, or I must have done something wrong, or that was what I deserved. Was when I started to build my knowledge around the dynamics, I started to have these light bulb moments of like, right, okay, so that was intentional. That phase of the relationship was that, and that was that. And that for me, again, was a huge part of healing, because I then started to understand that it wasn't me. It was their patterns of behavior that are, as we know with the family court, sadly, it's pretty textbook, isn't it? We can kind of go from stage 1, 2, 3 and all the way to the end, knowing what is going to happen, sadly. And when I started to understand that, again, it was just, really, really vital part of my healing. And the final thing is just that appreciation again, which is sort of linked to the gratitude, don't get me wrong, but when I was in the depths, shall we say, and even now, I've literally got on a scrappy piece of A4 paper, when my child was taken from me, I wrote down every single thing I could think of that I appreciated. And it's literally, I've literally got it next to me, things like a hot water bottle, a shower, I can read a book, I can walk, I can breathe, I can have fresh air. It was literally the basics of life, to be honest. But that appreciation list for me at that time was kind of focusing on something that I had rather than what I didn't have. And I still look at it now, as all of us will do, sadly. We have days where we don't possibly feel as good as other days, which is completely normal. But I will still look at that list and go, okay, Michelle, it's okay. You've still got this, and you've still got, that to kind of draw upon. And final things in this sort of part about, what helped me reclaim my life are just inner peace and acceptance. So for many of us, we blame ourselves, as I said, whether it's that relationship or whether it's how family courts have evolved or are evolving, we blame ourselves, which is easy to do, sadly. But when I started to go, actually, this isn't me, it's not my identity, during those family court proceedings, I fought so hard, and I always acted with integrity. I tried to protect my child. I tried to uphold their wishes and feelings. And for anyone listening now or anyone watching this on replay, if you have done that, know that you are a blimmin' amazing mother. You should be so, so proud of yourself. And you never let anyone down, whether that's yourself, your child, your children. You didn't let them down. The system did. And I think that is such an important thing to remember. Just acceptance around, actually, we have done nothing wrong, in essence. And it's just something that we often don't reflect on, because we reflect on, did I say something wrong? Did I not do this? Or maybe if I'd just done what the CAFCAS worker said. And actually, if you can put your head on the pillow at night and say, no, I fought my hardest. No, I either did what they said because that's what they told me to do, or I didn't do it because, my child was upset by that. Whatever way you want to view that, just know that you did your best, and that is more than good enough. Another thing is just going back to the self-care. So, you know, I used to feel guilty for doing things for myself, as if it was wrong, as if, how dare I, because my child was struggling, how dare I enjoy life, or how dare I even paint my nails? You know, it's not fair when they're in a situation they're in. But when I started to really care for myself, I noticed that my child started to see a stronger version of me, because I felt a stronger version of me. And as a result, she became stronger. And I could see that when we had to have contact with her father at handovers, I felt stronger. She was then stronger. She was more vocal with her feelings, and we both became stronger together. So for anyone that's feeling guilty about kind of looking after yourself, please know that when you love yourself, when you give yourself the care that you would give your child role models that, or sorry, you role model that for your child, and they follow suit. They become stronger, they become more empowered, they start to know their worth as well. Sorry, I feel like there's a big list here, but I want to share as much as possible.
No, please do, please do, please do, because it's helping me. Really, I need to hear these things sometimes, because you go so far in your healing journey, don't you? And it's actually not linear. You know, there's days where you go up and down, isn't there? You know, so it's just, you know, it's wonderful to hear this, and it's really helping me. And I'm sure if it's helping me, it's helping everyone else, Michelle.
Yes,
so
thank you,
please,
lovely.
you know.
Thank you. So, I mean, the final sort of, I think there's a couple more things to go. So another thing for me was like, how do I progress? I felt stuck. I had a business to run that I didn't want to run because I didn't have the mental capacity to do so. And I was like, how am I going to move forward? And I started off by literally saying yes to really small things. You know, so a friend would text saying, do you fancy a walk today? And in my head, I was like, no, I don't want to get out of bed, to be honest. But I knew in that moment I had to, because I knew that was just a really small way of actually reconnecting with life again, reconnecting with me, you know, a community, shall we say, through that friendship. And saying yes to those really small things actually was the start of progress, you know, in everything, not just family court proceedings, but in actually regaining me, reconnecting with myself. So I understand a lot of people will say, well, I don't have the confidence to do that. But for me, when I kind of said yes to those small things, my confidence came, or started to return, shall I say. So, you know, if you're thinking about, do I actually go out for that walk, or do I go for the coffee, or, you know, do I apply for that job? Do I sign up to that course? Or do I do Sarah's session next week? You know, anything that may be coming up, you're thinking, do I, don't I? As much as you can, say yes, because those small steps will start to build momentum and your confidence, and that momentum for reclaiming you, but also reclaiming your life, will start to build as well. And then, as I said before, another thing, again, which was so significant for me, and I think this, and probably gratitude and breath work, were probably the key things for me on how I evolved after, you know, the darkest moment, shall we say. So spirituality was one of those, and it just, for me, gave me signs that I wasn't alone, that there was like a greater thing at play, shall we say, helping my child and I, protecting my child and I, and just a sense of, you know, we are being looked after. And I get completely, like, for those of you that had your child removed, you know, like myself in that time, I didn't understand why. I felt peed off, for want of a better way of putting it, that someone had done that. I was like, well, I believed in, you know, my guardian angels, whatever resonates with you on that front. How can you do that? How is that allowed? If you are protecting us, looking after us, how can that be our, you know, reality now? But now, again, all said in hindsight, looking back, if this hadn't have happened to us, I probably wouldn't be here, because I wouldn't have survived the mental, physical strain of those months. My daughter wouldn't be as empowered as she is now. My path wouldn't have evolved into the purpose, the passion I've got now. And lots of things, although they're not, you know, entirely sort of fixed, want a better way of putting it, in our life, things have moved on hugely positively since that darkest day. So whatever that looks like for you, you know, whether it's like praying to God, you know, meditating, maybe nature, or just, you know, reconnecting with yourself, or even for you, if you are spiritual as well, you know, just know that that hope sometimes is enough. You know, those days where you don't feel strong, where you kind of feel, I want to give up now, I can't do this anymore, just know that that belief, that knowing, that certainty that something is with you, someone is protecting you, as hard as it is to see, it will carry you through on the days when perhaps, you know, you can't carry yourself. And the final point for me on this is just around being able to sit with your emotions. So again, before all of this, for me, I felt like crying was a weakness. You know, I saw it as, well, people that cry, you know, they don't have much strength. You know, there's something sort of unstable about them, and I mean that in the most respectful way. But one of the transformative things for me was actually learning that crying, which I did, I absolutely cried a river, releasing those emotions is actually strength, that is resilience. And it's not about disconnecting from your emotions or numbing them or feeling, actually I can't cry today because, you know, I'm weak, or because I should be healed by now, or anything like that. It's about connecting to yourself. If you feel the need to cry, if you feel the need to release anger in a safe way, do so, because that will help you return to yourself. And when we sit with those emotions, you know, the energy linked to them leaves the body. And when we suppress the emotions, they become trapped. And that's when our body starts to feel heavy. We feel the aches, we feel the pains, we feel the depression, we feel the anxiety, because it's all that density, for want of a better way of putting it, you know, stored in our body. So it's not about kind of avoiding those feelings. It's just about trying to shorten the time between pulled away to them, i.e. crying that river, and then coming back to yourself. So, you know, you can sit and cry and cry and cry, as I have done, and that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely normal. But then it's releasing that and then being ready to go again. And that for me is where the power lies. It's not suppressing. It's just, right, I'm resting now. I'm releasing these emotions. I'm going to have a good sleep tonight. I know tomorrow is another day, a new start, and I'm ready to go again. And it's just giving yourself that grace to just be. You know, we're a human being, not a human doing. And many of us forget to just be, to just allow, rather than to feel like we've got to do kind of all the time. So I have just written at the bottom of that slide just a really short little practice, which you're welcome, obviously, to have a look at now or when you watch the replay. It's just really about sort of connecting with yourself and just allowing what I call the flow of emotions as well. And breath work can help support that. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with those emotions, then just use your breath to control that. Use your breath to kind of process those emotions. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. And I think, you know, we're taught, aren't we, from a young age, you know, you've got to push through, is this idea that you've got to keep pushing through. And if you don't, you're somehow weak, you know, you've got to shrug things off and get through. And I can't think of any worse advice, actually, than push through when you're absolutely exhausted, you know, your body keeps the score, and it does. You know, and I think there's nothing stronger, and this is something I've learned over the years, you know, if there's nothing stronger than getting to know yourself, being in touch with your emotions, allow those feelings to come, you know, because that's when you will connect with yourself, and that's when you will start to heal your body, because your body then knows you're being kind to it. You're being kind, you're not judging yourself. You know, you're probably the only one in life who isn't. You know, we get enough from the rest of the world, especially when you're in family court. So absolutely, you know, I always say be kind to yourself. You know, you're the first person you come into this world with. You're the last person you leave with. You need to be okay yourself first and foremost, for everything else to be okay, you know. So there's nothing wrong with putting yourself first. And it was really interesting. I'll just pick up quickly on what you said there as well, when you talked about, you know, how you bravely said you don't think you'd have probably been here and survived it had it been if your daughter sort of was with you perhaps through that horrendous time, because you're already so drained and exhausting at the prospect of what the family court and agencies are doing to you. It's so hard, isn't it, to be there then and strong for your children without having any respite. And because I had my children with me, that really resonated with me, Michelle, because I was having such panic attacks and such exhaustion over those 5, 6 years, even though I was grateful, to have my children with me. But there were days when I thought, well, what if I take my life and my children are here? That's how bad I was. How can I can't go on at one point, even with them with me. And to, so it resonates in the sense that you're still picking yourself up from the bottom there. I remember changing my will because I didn't see how I could survive. I didn't see how I could keep going on. And I changed my will to make sure that my children would be okay and that the perpetrators wouldn't have anything, because I was really worried that my body wouldn't go on. So I kind of resonate that from a slightly different point of view, but coming from that same fear really of those agencies around you, what they're doing to you in the family court system. So I just wanted to, I just noticed that then when you said that, and how it did really sort of resonate with me and hit home, and how you've managed to get through those times and used all these, techniques to get where you are now, and you've realized that you do have to be kind to yourself, and you don't judge yourself. Be kind, let those feelings come. And
I think as women, we're very good as women, aren't we, about beating ourselves up. I don't really know. I know personally where that comes from me, but I don't know as women if that's like a conditioning about, I think I did something about this earlier online, but how we are taught through like marketing or, even kind of childhood, perhaps, that we have to look a certain way, we have to act a certain way, to, speak a certain way, have a certain job, have a certain position in the family. And there is so much conditioning wrongly out there, isn't there? Let alone when you throw yourself in family courts and you deal with that dynamic, for want of a better way of putting it, that is another level of kind of, oh my God, like this is just overwhelming, too much. And I think, like you said so rightly, Sarah, the more we can connect with actually, no, this is who I am, this is me, I trust me, I know me, I believe in me, it is just so powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely, Michelle. So as one more question here to ask you, Michelle, so it's a bit about your book. So tell us a bit about the Start Over Voices audio book, and why you chose to write your story about your family court experience.
So for me, obviously my chapter is about, as you said, the family courts. And I will just draw upon an African proverb, just because it's a proverb I learned years ago, but I've never ever forgotten it. So as you'll see, it says, until the lion learns to write, the story will always favour the hunter. So for me, that's about us lionesses, us mums, that actually are starting to, where we can, obviously safely, speak out to take the narrative away from that hunter, i.e. the family courts and associated organisations. And I think until people join together and start to do that, which is what I hope to do in just the tiniest way, don't get me wrong, by writing my chapter, is just to then give people hope, to inspire them to know actually this is literally a chapter. It doesn't have to be your whole story, but just to know as well that, as we've touched on, I know throughout the session, but my story isn't unique. I'm sure ladies watching, I know yourself, Sarah, can resonate with my story, and to know that actually we are growing as a community, we're growing in numbers, we will rise together. And I am a firm believer the truth always prevails. And what happens in darkness always comes to light. Keep believing in you, keep believing in the power of hope, of certainty, have that faith. And with not just my own story, but the stories in the book, which I'll be honest are about, various subjects, but they all demonstrate like courage. They demonstrate, the point of someone being at rock bottom to the point of actually rising, that courage, that hope, that healing, and that ability to just, I say just, I don't mean to use that word, but to start over. So for the ladies watching tonight, just to end, I just want you to know it's not your shame to carry this. It never was. It's not your identity. It never has been your identity. And there is nothing wrong with you, and there never has been. And please just know this is not your ending. As I said, this is one chapter, not your whole story. And, you know, I know it may feel dark right now, you know, but you still get to decide what happens next. And please, for anyone watching this now on replay, choose yourself and just rise. And even if it's messy, even if it's difficult, even if it feels slow, just one step at a time, keep choosing you, because the perpetrator, the organizations, the family courts, they took that power from you. But please just know it's just buried. No one can ever take your strength and your power from you. It's still there, and it is literally just waiting for you to come back. So please keep going, and please keep believing in yourselves.
Wow, that's so true, Michelle. That's so, so true. I felt every word. I felt every word. Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you. I'm so sorry I didn't keep up with the comments then. I do apologize, but I could see some of them coming through there. I don't know if you can see any of them, Michelle, if you want to have a little look.
Sarah's just left, bless her. So, sorry,
oh,
not Sarah, Rachel, apologies.
Rachel, yeah, Rachel just left, yeah.
I know,
yeah,
I've talked a little bit too long, so apologies, ladies. I know it's meant to be an hour session.
Oh, we've only gone over a bit, only 10 minutes. That's not too bad. That's not too bad for us, because I can talk the length of people normally. It's a good job I'm tired this evening. Oh, gosh. No, thank you so much. And I really needed that. And, you know, it helped me. So I'm sure that it will help so many people, because there's going to be so many watching it on replay, as well as the ladies that are here tonight as well. So thank you so much, Michelle. I know we're going to be doing a session soon as well, again, aren't we? I can't remember what date from the top of my head, but we'll be posting on that, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll look forward to it. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for the lovely ladies that have taken the time to watch as well. It means a lot. So thank you. And as I said, never forget that you're not ever alone, okay? We understand. Absolutely. We're here, and yeah, we're in this together.
100%. Good night, everyone, and thank you so much again for joining.
Lots of love. Thank you, Sarah.
Lots
Take
of
care.
Love. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.